So, hello all of online fans. I'm actually with Raphael van Lierop right now, also known as the Duke of Awesome, sorry. We are really pleased to have you here right now. The reason I wanted to speak with you is actually for the online service. You worked on two games, the Dawn of War and the Space Marine game.
Right.
I think that watching those two games, we can say that you're a Warhammer 40K fan.
Well, I worked on two Warhammer 40K games, and I wasn't that familiar with the IP when I first started working on Dawn of War, but I've worked on Dawn of War, Winter Assault, the first expansion pack, and then Space Marine. So over time, I've learned a love of the IP because it's so rich and there's so much history there, and it's just really exciting. So I wasn't a fan when I started, but I'm certainly a fan at the end.
That's great. So you probably looked into the tabletop game and how it worked. How was it like to transpose that tabletop into a real-time strategy game where actually the mechanics are different? There's no roll of dice or things like that.
Well, when I worked on Dawn of War, I wasn't part of the design department. I was in the production team, so I wasn't driving that part of the project at all. But I think one of the reasons why Relic had the opportunity to make that game was because the core team that started Dawn of War were such big fans of the IP and played the tabletop game a lot in the studio, and Games Workshop, when they knew that, it gave them a sense of comfort with the studio and an understanding that Relic really appreciated the IP. So that was a big reason for why Relic was able to make Dawn of War originally. And then with Space Marine, building on like 8 years of sort of history with in collaborating with Games Workshop, again, was really the reason why we were able to make that game. I don't think Games Workshop would have had the trust in any other developer to make Space Marine, because it is such it's such a historical, it's such an important IP for them. It's got so much history, and the fan base is huge, and they're very particular about how it's represented, and because there's a lot of risk involved with interpreting it as a video game, and we've seen examples of where it's been done well, and other examples where it hasn't. So they were very, very focused on making sure that it would be made to quality and that it would be reflective and respectful of the IP, and they knew that we would have that in my Relic.
Great. So you touched the point there. There's a huge fan base of the Game Workshop, and many of the games, unfortunately, aren't that great.
Mm-hmm.
When Dawn of War released, what was the fan response to that game? Were they pleased, or some hardcore fans are really demanding?
I mean, generally, I think the fans were really pleased with it because it was so faithful to the IP, and it was really, in a way that's very different from Space Marine. Dawn of War really brought the tabletop game to life in a way that had never really been seen before, and it's a much closer connection between the experience of Dawn of War and the tabletop than there is Space Marine and the tabletop. It's a much different kind of experience. So, I think they were very excited about what we did. They felt that it was very faithful to the IP. And of course, because they were so hardcore and there's so much detail and history in the world, you always have that, just like with any long-standing IP that has its fans, there are always a lot of people that will be critical or they'll question why you did certain things or whatever, but that's just part of the fun, because it means they care and they're passionate about it and whatnot. And I think that's been part of the success of that franchise, has been to, build on that fan base.
Great. Actually, there's a sequel, the Dawn of War 2, which is Chaos Rising. You didn't work on that project?
I didn't work on any of the Dawn of War 2. Dawn of War 2, Chaos Rising is an expansion for Dawn of War 2. So the Dawn of War 2 was standalone, and there's been, I think, 3 expansions to Dawn of War 2. So I didn't work on those games.
Okay, great. We'll be switching to Space Marine now. So obviously, it's a lot different than what we've seen from Game Workshop adaptation. So what was the motivation to build an action game from a franchise that is associated to tactical warfare?
You know, the starting point for Space Marine was to focus on the character of the Space Marine, and not to think about the tabletop game at all, but to think about what the universe of Warhammer 40,000 is, and what is the way to realize that for players in a way that they've never experienced before. And we're really focused on the Space Marine character because they're like the iconic hero of that IP. And when we looked into what is a Space Marine and understood, you know, from working with Games Workshop, what's the psychology of a Space Marine, what is the role of a Space Marine in the universe, what kind of training and transformation and indoctrination did they go through to become a Space Marine, a lot of that informed the mechanics in the game and the portrayal of the characters and how are they animated and how do they speak to each other and what does the world look like and all that kind of stuff. So the starting point was really almost like an emotional starting point of like, how do we create for the player the feeling of being the most important hero in the universe, basically. And then everything we did was sort of in service to that idea. So it was never about trying to adapt the tabletop. It was always about trying to deliver on a very strongly kind of emotional experience.
I think you did a really great job.
Thank you.
Because that's the first, Warhammer franchise that character has soul, I guess, in it. So, while the over-the-shoulder shooter existed as far as MDK and probably before that, it's really Gears of War that popularized the style in this generation. You've obviously been compared to that franchise. Mm-hmm. How did you adapt to make it different and stand out beside that?
I mean, I think we always knew that as soon as we were making the third-person action game that had an over-the-shoulder camera, that had shooting in it, and with a really big character, like physically imposing character, we knew that obviously there would be comparison. I don't know that I don't think we tried to be different from Gears. We just tried to be true to what the Space Marine hero was. And so making decisions like the easy road would have been to just take the existing mechanics of Gears and put like a 40K wrapper. And, we were very deliberate about, emphasizing melee. So we said we want to make a combat system where the player can choose between ranged and melee at pretty much any point, and they're both totally viable. And if they want to play mostly melee, they can. If they want to play mostly shooting, they can. And we almost never forced them to make that choice between the two. That was an important choice because that spoke to the tactical ability of the Space Marine and the overall prowess they have as a fighter to be able to just pick up any weapon and be successful in any situation. So again, it was always coming back to delivering on that character. The choice to not have a cover system, it wasn't as much to try and be different from Gears as it was to say the Space Marine hero, it didn't feel right to us for them to be crouching behind cover. Even though, in Dawn of War 2, for example, they did have cover in that game. I think that had a lot to do with the fact that, it was an extension of Company of Heroes gameplay to some degree. But, although, and it was innovative in its own right as well. But for us, we really said, what feels right for this character? Does it feel right to have them hiding behind pillars and, crouching down and taking pot shots at enemies and blind fire and all this kind of stuff? And it just didn't feel heroic enough. So we really wanted to create an experience where you were always surrounded by enemies, that you felt confident moving forward into battle, that you didn't have that feeling of wanting to run back and hide and wait for your stuff to regenerate. So that's why we made decisions like the health system, regenerating health was you go into the middle of battle and you pick up a guy and saw him in half. We made very specific decisions, again, always around trying to deliver on that character. So it was never about trying to be different from Gears, and in a way, maybe we weren't different enough from Gears. I think generally speaking, I think that people who play both games will say, maybe it looks similar because the camera angles and the characters are both really bulky, but when you play them, they feel very different.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm actually playing it right now, and the one of the major points I like was the energy regeneration.
Right.
Too much games today are just wait and heal yourself. That was great, just trying to kill people out. So now I'm gonna talk about major complaint we have on live right now. So as you may know, Space Marine ship with no multiplayer right now. Although there's a patch that has been announced to add it, it's not the only game. So we do understand that the multiplayer on live works differently. May you speak with your experience on what are the issues with the multiplayer on live?
I have no idea, and you'd have to talk to someone at Relic about that. I really don't know.
No problem. Talking about the OnLive platform, just to make sure, have you seen the OnLive platform?
Sure.
So the cloud gaming actually, and the model they put makes pretty much every game accessible. And the economy we're right now, not everyone will be able to access next-gen console or power up their PC for next game. So how do you think that OnLive will benefit from this offering that all-around platform?
I mean, I think the cloud-based gaming service like OnLive is really exciting from the standpoint of both developers and gamers. In the sense that, as you pointed out, as a gamer, I want to be able to access any content out there on the platform that I have. So if I have PlayStation 3, I want to be able to play everything on PlayStation 3, for example. And then as a developer, I want to focus more on the content and the experience of the game, not so much on trying to make it work on a whole bunch of different hardware. So I think it's pretty exciting for a lot of reasons. And I think even aside from the economic situation that we're in right now, where people are a lot more price conscious, I think long term I can see an amazing amount of value in that model. And in a lot of ways, I think if it's successful, it could really change the industry.
Great. Now let's switch on you. So you're not at Relic anymore. You're at Helm Studios.
That's right.
So what are you working on right now?
You know, Helm is a company that I founded fairly recently. It's only been around for a few months, and sort of have three main focuses right now. The first one is original IP development for video games. So I'm working with different studios that are trying to create original IP games, and I'm helping them to develop those games and to put creative process in their studios that are successful, and just supporting them that way. The second thing is I'm working on transmedia IP development, so I'm working in collaboration with some production companies in Hollywood that are doing IP creation that's meant to work for games and film and graphic novels and all this kind of stuff. So that's another area of the industry, sort of outside of games, but touches on games, that is really exciting. There's a lot of growth happening there, and I think from the perspective of an IP creator, it's really exciting to be able to look at something much more universal and say, I don't want to just create an experience on one platform. I want to create an experience that gives something special for whether you're watching it on television, or it's a movie, or it's a video game, or it's a graphic novel, or it's a regular novel, or it's a web series, or it's an alternate reality game. I'm creating a universe for you to play in, and I find that really exciting. The third thing that I'm doing is supporting studios with production guidance on team structure and production methodology, and basically helping them to have more empowered, more effective teams. So those are the three kind of main pillars of my focus at Helm. And then, in the next sort of couple of years, I'm incubating some game ideas of my own on the side, and I'd hope to eventually be able to develop some stuff in addition to that. But right now, my focus is very clearly on consulting and supporting existing teams and IP development.
Great. Before we finish that, is there anything you want to say to OnLive fans?
I really hope you enjoy Space Marine. I think it's a really exciting service, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the future.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I just want to get your agreement. Can we take part or the whole interview to put it as a podcast, or just to give us for our reader to listen?
Yeah. Provided we get the disclaimer that I don't work for Relic anymore, that it's clear up front.
Perfect. That will be sure to be put, and I'll say it on the audio file.
Cool.